نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحج أشهر معلومات فمن فرض فيهن الحج فلا رفث ولا فسوق ولا جدال في الحج وما تفعلوا من خير يعلم الله وتزودوا فإن خير الزاد التقوى واتقون يا أولي الألباب. ليس عليكم جناح أن تبتغوا فضلا من ربكم فإذا أفضتم من عرفات فاذكروا الله عند المشعر الحرام واذكروه كما هداكم وإن كنتم من قبله لمن الضالين. ثم أفيضوا من حيث أفاض الناس واستغفروا الله إن الله غفور رحيم. Respectful honorable friends, in last week's Quran Tafseer, we had commenced with a few laws and ahkam with regards Hajj. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the previous ruku had mentioned some of the various different masail with regards Hajj, and they were mainly to do with when a person needs to give some penalty or compensation with regards something that he missed out in the days of Hajj. Further, in the verses that have been recited to you and in verses to come also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues with making mention of various ahkam rulings with regards Hajj. In the first verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that al-Hajju ashhurun ma'lumat, that Hajj is in the known months. فَمَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجَّ, thus upon whoever Hajj becomes farz, فَلَا رَفَثَ, there is no sexual intercourse, وَلَا فُسُوء, no sinning, وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ, and no arguing, fighting in Hajj. وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يَعْلَمُ اللَّهُ, and whatever you do of good, Allah knows it. وَتَزَوَّدُوا, and take provisions. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى, thus indeed the best of provisions is taqwa. وَاتَّقُونِي يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, and fear me, O people of sense. In this opening verse of this ruku, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that al-Hajju ashhurun ma'lumat, that Hajj is in the months, ma'lumat, known months. Meaning that when a person wants to perform Hajj, Hajj can only be performed in the months which are the ma'lumat, the known months. These known months are the months of Shawwal, Zulqa'dah, and the first 10 days of Zulhijjah. Which means that ihram for Hajj will only be allowed and permissible in these months. The months of Shawwal, Zulqa'dah, and the first 10 days of Zulhijjah. So if somebody today decides that he wants to go for Hajj, and he books his ticket, and he goes to Makkah, and he has his ihram also, his ihram for Hajj will not be permissible, and he won't be able to perform the Hajj. So the Hajj can only be performed in specific months. From the month of Shawwal, which is after Ramadan, a person can make the intention of doing Hajj, and he can also adorn himself with the ihram of Hajj. Zulqa'dah also, and the first 10 days of Zulhijjah, because after those 10 days, there is no Hajj after that. So Hajj can only be performed in the Ashhurum Ma'lumat. That's why the Fuqaha mentioned that if a person adorns himself with the ihram before that, his Hajj won't be accepted. And some ulama, as Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah also mentions, that if a person does put ihram before these months, his Hajj will be accepted, but it is makruh to do so. It is makruh to wear the ihram before the month of Shawwal. So al-hajju ashru ma'lumat. The hajj is only in the ma'lumat, in the prescribed months. And this, dear friends, there is great wisdom in this. One is that obviously it creates a system wherein obviously hajj takes place collectively. Otherwise, if it wasn't in the prescribed months, you'd find that people would just go for hajj whenever they'd want to, and there wouldn't be the impact as it does have currently. One of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned this also, as we did in the previous verses, where mention was made with regards Umrah as well as Hajj. Umrah doesn't have a specific season or months when it can be performed. Umrah can be performed at any time. However, Hajj is not the same as Umrah. So if there were anyone who may have got the misunderstanding that that's the way you can go for Umrah at any time, you can probably also go for Hajj any time. So in order to remove this doubt and to clarify it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals this verse, Al-Hajju Ashurun Ma'lumat. So if a person decides that he wants to put the ihram and he goes there now, and he goes and he puts his tent up in Mina, and then he goes to Arafat also, he tents there, also he stays the night in Muzdalifah, then he goes and he slaughters also, and he stays in Mina, he does the entire rituals. It will be just a journey. It will be just a journey, and he won't get any reward for it. Just where, for example, if somebody decides now that he wants to perform his Maghrib or Isha Salat, his Maghrib and Isha won't be done because it's not the time for it. In the same way for Hajj also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed a specific time when it will be done. Unlike Umrah, and because Umrah, the reason behind this is that we know Hajj is farz on a person, whereas Umrah is not farz on a person. So if Umrah was also prescribed a certain time, then it would also become difficult for many of those people who would want to just perform Nafal Umrah, because then they would be restricted to a specific time. By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not ascribing a specific time for it, it means that throughout the year people can go to the haram and occupy the haram, and throughout the year people can still go and perform Umrah according to the time that they have, according to days off they have. However, it shouldn't also become like a holiday trip. Unfortunately, we find today that Umrah has also become a holiday trip. Just a few days ago, somebody who I was talking with himself just mentioned how he said in the summer holidays he said that he's going for Umrah, and he mentioned how the kids are wanting him to go because obviously other kids in their environment, their school, they said to go for Umrah, so the other kids also have the desire, which is good, so take them also. So he says to me that, well, he was speaking Gujarati in actual fact, in which the translation of which he says, well, I'll also go and take a trip. Translation of it was, so in the holidays I'll also go for 2 weeks and I'll also take a trip to Umrah and back. So from the way he was talking also, you could tell that it was just a case of, well, the schools are off also, so we're going to go somewhere else. Instead of going somewhere else, let's just go for Makkah, Medina. At least the kids will also feel that they've taken a flight somewhere, they've also sat in an aeroplane. So we regard it to be just a trip. A trip the way we'd go to another foreign country, we regard it to be just a trip for Umrah and back without realizing that it is actually an ibadat. We need to realize that it is an ibadat that we are going for, and not just merely a trip. Either a foreign trip or a shopping trip, whichever people have the intention of, it is an ibadat. فَمَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجَّ فَلَا رَفَثَ وَلَا فُسُوقَ وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of some rulings with regards Hajj. فَمَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجِّ. Thus upon whoever Hajj becomes farz. So already here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions مَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجِّ, that from whoever, from all the believers, upon whoever Hajj becomes farz. As we all know, Hajj isn't farz on every person. And this also, dear friends, is one of the great wisdoms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salat is an ibadat wherein a person doesn't need to be wealthy, a person doesn't need to be able, physically able to be able to perform Hajj, Salat. Salat is something that even if a person is disabled, for example, or bedridden, he can also perform his salat whilst he is on the bed. Person doesn't need to be wealthy either to perform salat. So salat is a farz act which any person can perform. Hence there is no restrictions with it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it farz on every person. With regards Sawm, fasting, this also a person doesn't need to spend. So this has also made, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also made a farz on every person. However, as we've done not too long ago, there may be those people who due to certain circumstances may not be able to fast if they are ill or traveling. For them Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, well, they can now do it on another date. It still remains farz on them. If not, then they pay some fidya for it. Whereas Hajj, dear friends, is one of those ibadats which not each and every single person can do. Hence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom that He has not made Hajj farz on every person. Otherwise, if Hajj was made farz just like Salat was, then there will be so many Muslims who unfortunately would die not being able to fulfill this fariza, this compulsion. And obviously, it is not befitting of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to oppress any of His servants, to take them to account for something that they cannot accomplish. Hence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made Hajj only farz on man istata'a ilayhi sabila, which we did last week, those people who have the ability to go and perform the Hajj. Having the ability means that a person financially has the means of undertaking the journey, sustaining himself whilst he is there, and also able to sustain his family when he returns. If anybody has so much wealth, not just the amount by which he can undertake the journey, but to undertake the journey, sustain for himself whilst he is there, and also to leave behind sufficient provisions for his family at home. If he has so much means, then Hajj becomes farz on a person. And once Hajj becomes farz on a person, then a person should not delay it unnecessarily. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam himself has mentioned in a hadith that a person upon whom Hajj becomes farz and he doesn't perform his Hajj, the Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wasallam says that he can die as he wish, as a Yahudi or a Nasara. So the moment Hajj becomes farz on a person, one should not delay in fulfilling and discharging this duty, as a person doesn't know whether he will still live for the next year's Hajj to come or not. If he has fulfilled his Hajj, then whenever he dies, at least he has fulfilled and he has discharged this first act upon him. Otherwise, the more a person delays, and if he dies, he will be questioned with regards why he didn't perform the Hajj if Hajj was farz on him. And we find this is something very common, that people due to certain other reasons will always delay the Hajj, that not this year, next year, because this year for some reason they might have some special goods coming in, or they're waiting for a special season, a sale or something, so they can't close their businesses. So they continue to delay with their Hajj, whereas Hajj has already become farz upon them. Yes, for a person, if Hajj hasn't become farz on him, and he knows that if he's working, if he continues to work in the manner he is, then maybe in a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years, he may be able to attain so much wealth when he can undertake the journey. That's a different reason. But for a person upon whom Hajj has already become farz, he should not delay in performing his Hajj. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that upon whoever Hajj becomes farz, and when a person goes for the Hajj, then فَلَا رَفَثَ وَلَا فُسُوقَ وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of 3 things. That these 3 things should not take place in the days of Hajj. One is فَلَا رَفَثَ. A person should not indulge in any forms of relationships with his wife, including any things that lead to relationship. Rafath means any form of lewd talk or actions, whether it is the actual act of intercourse itself, or whether it is just kissing, cuddling, or whether it is just talk towards these type of things. None of these are permissible during the days of Hajj. Wala fusuq, and no form of fisk, sin, is permissible. Now, as we know, sin itself is not permissible at any time. Hence here, wala fusuq, some mufassirin have translated it by fusuq, meaning those things which are not allowed in ihram, they've regarded that to be fusuq. For example, we know when a person performs his salah, then in this position of salat, the duration that he performs his salah, there are certain things which are normally halal which also become haram. Eating, talking and drinking, which is normally halal, when a person performs his salah, when he says Allahu Akbar and he begins his salah, but even that talking, eating, drinking becomes haram just for that period of time, although it is halal. In the same way, when a person fasts also, meeting with his wife, eating and drinking becomes haram for that period of time, although it is normally halal. In the same way, when a person is in the state of ihram, then certain halal things also become haram. For example, it is not when a person is in ihram, it is not permissible for a person to do hunting. He cannot hunt whilst he is in the state of ihram. He cannot have a relationship with his wife when he is in ihram. A person cannot par his nails or remove any hair from the body. In the same way, a person cannot utilize any perfume whilst in a state of ihram. For males also, they are not allowed to wear any clothing which are sewn. And for females, it is not allowed for them that anything should cover their face. These 6 things are haram when a person is in a state of ihram. Otherwise, it is halal. So when a person is in the state of ihram, even these things become haram. The ruling with regards to the face. One of the things of ihram is this way the males are not supposed to cover their head. In the same way, the women are not supposed to let any clothing cover their face. However, this doesn't mean that during the days of Hajj, now those who wear hijab remove their hijab and do not wear the hijab. But it means that the hijab should be still preserved, but in a manner wherein the cloth itself does not touch on the face. And today's time there are very different ways that women folk adhere to, wherein they wear certain types of headgear wherein the niqab stays on them but it doesn't touch the face. It doesn't now mean that during days of Hajj now they all take their veils off and they keep their faces open. This isn't what it means. So these type of things, utilizing scent, cutting the hair, hunting, which are normally permissible, these now are not permitted and allowed when a person is in a state of ihram. So some Mufassirin mention that wala fusuq, and do not sin, means do not commit any of these acts. And they say this on the basis that sinning obviously is haram at all times. So then it wouldn't be correct to say that during the days of Hajj don't do this, because it should not be done at all times. And those who regard fusuq to be general, which means that all forms of sins, they interpreted it meaning that obviously all sins are not permissible at any time. But all the more a person should not commit them when a person is in the state of ihram. Because obviously when a person is in a sacred place, in sacred times, sacred days, then the sin that he commits obviously will be increased. So if a person commits sin whilst he is in a state of ihram, or similarly he commits sins whilst he is in the sacred places, his sin and the punishment will be increased compared to performed anywhere else. So this is what it means, فَلَا رَفَثَ وَلَا فُسُوقٍ. Now with regards فَلَا رَفَثَ, which means that no form of lewd talk, etc. If a person does indulge in sexual intercourse whilst he is in ihram, his hajj becomes void. The compensation for that is that he has to sacrifice a big animal, and at the same time he has to now come out of ihram and he has to do the hajj the following year. It is not like one of the minor things where you just give compensation, you just sacrifice an animal and that will suffice for it, but it totally nullifies the hajj, and what he has to do is he has to repeat the hajj the following year. Further, وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ, and one should not argue or fight fil hajj, in the days of hajj. Meaning that when a person is in a state of ihram, he should avoid fighting, disputing and arguing with people, because this then removes the benefits of the hajj and it deprives the person of the full reward of hajj. That's what Nabi Karim sallallahu alaihi wasallam Sahih Hadith mentions, that whoever goes for hajj and he doesn't commit any of this rafas, fusuq and jidal, رَجَعَ كَيَوْمٍ وَلَدَتْهُ أُمُّهُ, he returns the way, when he returns like the day his mother gave birth to him, meaning that all his sins will be forgiven. A newborn child obviously has no sins at all in his record, In the same way, a person who goes for Hajj and he doesn't do any of these deeds, he returns like the day his mother gave birth to him, meaning that he returns forgiven from all his sins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of Rafath, Fusuq and Jidal. Now obviously, if we regard Fusuq to mean those things which are haram in ihram, then Rafath is already included in it. So there would not have been a need for Allah to mention it on its own. And if you regard Fusuq to be general, open, then obviously in all forms of sin, fighting and arguing is also included in it. But the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these separately is because there is a great threat that a person in a state of ihram might fall into this and commit these sins. And as we know for ourselves, with regards wala jidala, not to fight, when a person goes for Hajj, obviously he's not on his own. He's with many different people of different backgrounds, people of different thought, of different characters. So it's very easy that a person can fall into dispute with any person. So especially in current times, when a person wants to go for Hajj, he has to now go in groups. So when you go in groups, you'll be with people who you may not get on with. So there may be various times wherein a person may be inclined towards arguing with somebody or disputing with somebody. You may not get on with a person and he may do something, and anger and etc. tempers may fly. And you'll find that during the days of Hajj, it's warm also, people are moving about, space is tight also. There are many things wherein a person's anger just builds and builds. So it's very easy for a person to start arguing with somebody during the days of Hajj. So hence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that wala jidala, and do not argue with each other and do not fight with each other during the days of Hajj. And you'll find those who have been for Hajj, specifically when a person goes to the Jamarat, where the stoning of the shaitan, where the stoning takes place, there you'll find a lot of people fighting and arguing. Because obviously, what is the effect of the Satan that is there, the shaitanic environment that is there? And then also the crowd and environment, it has an effect on a person. Let's even witness family people fighting there and arguing with each other. The environment there, shaitan plays a person to that extent that you'll even find close friends also, people who are in the same group, say satis in the same group, companions in the same group, you'll even find them falling out and arguing in that environment and in the days of Hajj. That's why specifically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Fusuq and Jidal. Rafath also, as Mufti Shafi rahimahullah has mentioned, that when a person goes for Hajj, and obviously he's not with his wife the way he would be at home, and also there's also a lot of intermingling that takes place, as in people seeing other people, etc. So a person may become inclined that he feels he has a desire for his wife during those days. So there's a great threat that he might meet up with his wife. And that's why specifically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned فَلَا رَفَثَ, that in these days these type of things should not take place. وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ. Another thing here is with regards to the Arabic words of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the words فَلَا رَفَث وَلَا فُسُوق وَلَا جِدَالٍ. The la here refers to negative. That there is no rafath, there is no fusuq, and there is no jidal in the days of Hajj. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say, He doesn't command us that وَلَا تَرْفَثُوا وَلَا تَفْسُقُوا وَلَا تَجَادَلُوا. He doesn't command us that do not do rafath, do not do fusuq, do not do jidal. But He puts it this way, that it's no point Him commanding us not to do these things, because there is no such thing as rafath, jidal and fusuq in Hajj. One is where you tell a person that do not do this, and one is you say to a person, well, never mind doing it, it's not even allowed anyway. There's never mind going to that extent of telling a person, there's no scope for it anyway, that there's no need for you to be commanding it. So look at the balaghat of the Quran, the eloquency of the Quran, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't use it in the imperative form, He utilizes it in the negative form, meaning that there is no point to even falling into these things, because during the days of Hajj there is no such thing as rafath, fusuq and jidal. وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يَعْلَمْهُ اللَّهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and whatever you do of good nature, of goodness, يَعْلَمْهُ اللَّهُ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows of it. Referring that during the days of Hajj, whatever good a person does whilst he is in ihram, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of it. Whatever evil a person does, whatever wrong he does, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fully aware of it too. It also refers that when a person is in the state of ihram, then he should do as much good as possible. Because you'll find many people, dear friends, that whilst a person is in Mina and these Arafat, these blessed places, where you don't do anything there, you just sit there and you have to pass your time. When in Mina also, the first day, the entire day, you're just going to stay in Mina. There's nothing else you do there. You don't go to work there. You don't have to clock in, clock out anywhere. You don't have to go for any shopping, grocery shopping. There's nothing, no visiting. There's nothing to do. You just sit there and you need to pass your time. How do you pass your time? Now obviously there will be those people who will pass their time correctly, wherein they spend the time doing ibadat, because obviously that same occasion of Mina won't come again. That day when a person is in Mina and he spends in Mina, if he thinks, well, I'll spend this type of day some other day, he can't do that. He can't sit the whole day in the masjid in Dewsbury and think that he'll get the reward of spending the day in Mina. Or if he thinks that some other day after Hajj he'll come and he sit in Mina and sit there, that won't occur either. In reality, dear friends, you'll be quite surprised to hear this. But in non-Hajj days, if a person goes to Mina and Arafat, Mina and Arafat are actually picnic spots outside the days of Hajj. The Arabs have actually made these places picnic spots, wherein they actually go there as we would go for picnicking. To that extent, dear friends, if people, when they start to learn how to drive cars, they actually go to Mina, so they use the pillars there as cones to go around. And this I mentioned out of experience because of ties that we have there, wherein own family have been there and people have said, let's go out somewhere. And when they went out, they found that just sitting in a place of Arafat, where people were playing about and having picnics, etc. My own brother went for driving lessons at Mina. So this is what happens, dear friends, outside the blessed days of Hajj. So a person thinks he can make up for it, other days he can't. So when a person is spending the time in Mina and Arafat, Muzdalifah, etc., he should spend his time in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that now he makes up for all the gossip that he couldn't get a chance to during the normal days. He doesn't get a chance to sit with his people and find out what's happening. So he knows now is a good time. Let me go meet people from this area, from that area, that locality, and make up with all the latest gossip of the whole year that I missed out on. And neither is this place for women to sit and put mehndi on. You'll find this is very common amongst the women folk. They have to pass time, kill time. So they think, let's kill one bird with two stones. So they sit there also and they start putting henna, mehndi also on. And they sit there and they start talking about this person, that person, and the whole what sort of things take place. That's all the noises in the women's section. وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يَعْلَمُ اللَّهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that whatever good you do, Allah is aware of it. وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى وَاتَّقُونِ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Further, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَزَوَّدُوا and take provisions. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. And indeed the best of provision is taqwa. During the days of Jahiliyyah, there were people from Yemen. The people of Yemen would go for Hajj. Even in the days of Jahiliyyah, people used to go for Hajj. It wasn't done exactly how it is in Islam, but even those days they used to believe in Hajj and they used to also make tawaf, although they used to make tawaf of the Kaaba which had the idols in it. But they would also follow the sunnah of Sayyidina Ibrahim a.s. and perform Hajj. Now the people of Yemen, when they would go for Hajj, they would go without any provisions at all. And they would think that because we're going on a blessed journey, things will just become for us, we'll just find money and salwa coming from the heavens and we'll just have food and everything there. And what would happen is, obviously this is going to happen for anybody, although Allah can make it happen, but it's not going to happen. So they would end up begging and asking for people for food and money, etc. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when you go for Hajj, وَتَزَوَّدُوا, take provisions with you. So that it shouldn't be a case that you go there and once you are there, now you start begging and asking people for food and money. This is not allowed, this is not permissible. And you will find also a lot of people who are there and start begging and asking from people. There may be those who truly don't have anything, but you'll also get a lot of frauds there who have a lot of things, but coincidentally when they see a foreigner, they've lost their passport, their money and everything's lost, and they'll be even crying crocodile tears to you. The whole world has come to an end for them when they see the Hajis, especially a foreigner. They can just smell them. Foreigners smell different. Either it's the foreigners or it's their wallets that smell different. When I was studying in India, one foreign friend of mine so beautifully he said that if a foreigner has to come to this country, he can wear a lungi also, have pan in his mouth also, be as scruffy as he wants. They'll still smell him to be a foreigner. And now here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَزَوَّدُوا, take the provisions with. In this وَتَزَوَّدُوا, it shows us what tawakkul is. Tawakkul, which means wherein a person has faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah will see to him. However, true tawakkul is where a person takes provisions with him. True tawakkul isn't that a person just goes there and thinks, oh well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will see to it. That's why we find Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam also on so many occasions have told us that what is tawakkul. Tawakkul is where a person utilizes the asbab, the means that is there. Tawakkul is that a person utilizes the means. Tawakkul is not that a person discards the means. Otherwise you find Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself would not have taken up arms against the enemy. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would not have utilized medication when he became ill. None of these things would have occurred if Nabi Kareem, if the impression or if tawakkul was that a person just sits there and asks from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tawakkul is where a person utilizes the asbab, the means, and at the same time he believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be the giver of the means. This is what tawakkul is. Wherein a person has such type of tawakkul, wherein he utilizes the means, but he regards the means to be just a means. This is what tawakkul is. Whereas a person, that's why here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says, وَتَزَوَّدُوا, and when you go, take your provisions with. So Allah is commanding us that whatever provisions, which is asbab, isn't it? Otherwise you could think that, well, where best can a person be? You are in the haram in front of the Kaaba and you can just ask, make dua to Allah, that give me some food, and one of the birds or pigeons is flying there will just fall in front of your laps, nice barbecue there. This a person could believe such that he's in a best of place, in front of the best of places, Kaaba, where du'as obviously become accepted, and in the best of journeys, which is of Hajj. But here the two Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَزَوَّدُوا, so that at least when you go there, you are not causing inconvenience to other people. Because obviously when a person begs and that, he is causing inconvenience to himself, and he also causes inconvenience to other people. Other people who may not be able to, at that time, they just have enough for themselves, now they are inconvenient in helping another person. So وَتَزَوَّدُوا, this is not against tawakkul where a person takes means. So in all aspects of a person's life, a person should take up means, but in such a manner that he realizes that the means are from Allah, and not that a person adopts the means to such an extent that he thinks that's it, that without that nothing is going to happen. In a hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, لو أنكم تتوكلون على الله حق توكله لرزقكم كما يرزق الطير تغدو حماسا وتروح بطانا. That if you have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the manner in which a person should have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning in the correct manner, then He will provide for you, then Allah will provide for you كما يرزقكم الطير, the way He provides for birds. Birds, and the word of the hadith is, they leave the nest in the morning hungry and they return in the evening with their stomachs full. A bird in his nest, you won't find any fridge freezers there where you can store up all the microwave worms or something that you just take it out and put it in the microwave. You don't find anything stored in the nest. In the morning the bird just leaves its nest looking for food wherever it will get food. And obviously it has to return and give something to the smaller birds, the chicks also. But it just goes out having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and somewhere or the other Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides the rizq for it. And it returns home where it is now full, it isn't It doesn't return hungry. There's just one example of a bird. In the same way, so many other animals also we know, they don't have provisions stored up, but they still go and return with a full stomach. In the same way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that لَوْ أَنَّكُمْ تَتَوَكُّلُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ حَقَّ تَوَكُّلِهِ, that if you have tawakkul, belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala according to how you should do, Allah will also give you means, meaning Allah will provide you the means. If you study the words of the hadith, Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that the bird leaves, not that the bird stays in its nest in the morning and in the evening its stomach is full. He doesn't say this, does it? That it stays in a nest with an empty stomach and Allah gives it by the evening, it is full. But taghdu, it makes the morning, it goes in the morning with an empty stomach but returns with a full stomach. Meaning that the bird goes out to look for its provisions, for its rizq. So he goes out and does the task of looking, and what Allah's task is that it will to give it and it to enable it to find its provision. This is what true tawakkul is, where you take up the means and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then provide the means for you. This is what it is. So this is what we should also be doing. Have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you will find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide the means. Otherwise you find so many people who are looking for the means, and you'll find morning to evening they're looking for the means, they return in the evening and they still haven't found the means. Whereas a person goes out in the morning and you'll find he has a good day at work, he returns, or if it's not a case of a person's own business, a case where he's got a job where he's employed, then the fact that he has a job to go to every morning and he returns, this is also where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is providing for him. So this is what tawakkul is, where you take the means, but you regard the means to be only a means from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and your iman is always on Allah, that it is Allah who is the one who is going to give me. Which means that if for some reason or the other, if the job that you have, if this is lost, then it is not going to be the end of the world for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will still provide for you as long as you still adopt the means. That's why in another hadith also is mentioned that the most form of barakat there is in that sustenance which a person earns with his own hands. I mean that work which a person does with his own hands, which means when a person goes to work and he earns a living with it, even though it may be minute, the amount that he earns is less, this is better than a person begging or a person not earning at all. There's much more barakat in it. And that's where you find also those people who are on social security. Now there's nothing wrong, as long as halal, there's nothing wrong with social security. But if a person goes to work himself, and even if he earns less than what the social security gives him, I am sure in that less that he earns will be more barakat. Why? Because of the words of the hadith that he is earning it with his own hands, so that there will definitely be more barakat in it. And similarly, even if it is the same amount as he gets in social security, and you'll find many Muslims who are on social security themselves will admit this. They themselves will admit that when they do go to work, there's more barakat in that, and there's hardly any barakat in the social security. I don't think you'll find anybody who will say there's barakat. Well, nobody will ever say there's barakat in social security. Everybody wants an increase, even if it means increase from haram avenues of deceiving and deception also. It's never, the social security is never sufficient for a person. And it won't be either, because obviously there's no barakat in it. It's coming from an impure source. Although I won't say it's haram, but it is still not a pure source. And at the same time, a person will gain more benefit and more barakat in his wealth if he goes out and he works during the day. There's more barakat in it. Now here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَزَوَّدُوا, take provisions. Meaning, provisions, you take it with you from your home and you take it with you on your journey. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but the best of zad means provision. The best of provisions is taqwa. Meaning that when you go for the journey of Hajj, just the way when you're at home and you're preparing for the journey and you make sure that your visas are all correct, your passport is all correct, you see that your bags are packed, you've taken all your necessary things that you need, the clothing, other cosmetic items, whatever you need. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us here that khayr az-zad, don't forget the main item. And don't forget the main provision that you need to take, and that is taqwa. That because this journey is not just a trip, it is a great ibadat. And because it is a great ibadat, just so you prepare other things, because it's an ibadat, dear friends, which you can't just go on your own just like that without packing your bags or without taking anything at all. It doesn't work. You have to have your visas, you have to have obviously your money, you have to have your ticket, etc., your Hajj drafts and these things, which are all essentials. These have become essentials of Hajj in today's times. Person goes for Hajj, but he doesn't have his Hajj visa, for example, he won't be able to board the plane, he won't get far. Even if he gets there, he'll be sent back. He doesn't have the Hajj draft and all these type of things, he won't be able to perform his Hajj. So these things are included in the provisions. And at the same time, people will put a few clothing there, they'll take the ihram, the sandals, the clothing, all the various different things, which are things obviously a person needs to take. The camcorder, that's not something that you need to take. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that don't forget that you're not going for a holiday, you're not going for an outing, you're going for a great auspicious ibadat. And this ibadat warrants that a person spends his time correctly whilst he's gone for this ibadat. So he says, خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. The best provision is that of taqwa. So whilst the Haji does all his preparations to go for Hajj, he should not forget whether he has packed his taqwa or not. Hence, that's why you find, dear friends, that the season of Hajj starts not long after Ramadan. And Ramadan, dear friends, is the month of taqwa. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Siyam has been made farz upon a person. Why? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that you inculcate taqwa in you. So in the month of Ramadan, a person creates in him and a person builds into him taqwa. And then immediately after Ramadan finishes, Shawwal starts, and these are from Ashru Ma'lumat which we've done. The month of Hajj starts immediately, Shawwal, Zulqa'dah and Dhul-Hijjah. So the taqwa that he has accumulated, just where a person, he works, he accumulates the money. Once he's got that money, he utilizes it in the Hajj. In the same way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that spend the month of Ramadan correctly, accumulate the taqwa, and when you pack your bags also, don't forget to take the taqwa with you. See how it all links and all the hikmat of when Hajj also takes place. That's why a person who has the intention of Hajj, if he knows already from now that next year inshallah he's got the intention of performing Hajj, then all the more he should make sure that he spends his Ramadan correctly. Every person should do. But all the more he should do. So then you find that when he goes for Hajj, his Hajj, he'll spend his time correctly. Otherwise what will happen is you'll find that the Haji Sahib, mashallah, he's sitting on the plane, Saudi Airlines, going for his Hajj. But in the same Saudi Airlines, he's sitting there and he's watching a Bollywood film. He's in the same Saudi Airlines and he's going for his Hajj. And the time of Salat comes and he says, well, it's in the aeroplane, we don't have to perform Salah, we're going to perform enough Salah in the Haram, isn't it? One Salat, 100,000, so 100,000 namaz I don't have to perform later on in my life, isn't it? It doesn't work like that. Some people have the misconception that no, we don't perform our Salah, go for Hajj, perform a few Salats there, and obviously they'll accumulate for 100,000 Salat anyway, so whole life should be then, isn't it? Buy one, get one free there. Perform one, get 100,000, 99,000 free. It doesn't work in this manner, dear friends. Hence, the best of provisions is take your taqwa with. That the moment you leave your home, you should have your taqwa with. So the whole journey till you return, a person has his taqwa. So it shouldn't be a case that you're going for one farz and you're leaving behind so many farz. If it's a whole day's journey, you have 5 salats to perform in it, you're discarding 5 farz for 1 farz. And different, this is what happens. This is what happens when you go for Hajj also. Witness yourselves how many people in the plane, which is a 300, 400 amount of passengers in the plane. And now with the new type of plane that they're talking about with 800 passengers, notice yourselves, from the 300 or 400 people that are on the plane, how many actually perform the salat on the journey of Hajj? How many are sitting there and watching the various Bollywood films and other films that are there, the entertainment that are there? notice these things and you find there's no taqwa at all. A person, the Haji Sahib goes for his Hajj, he's returning also, all the signs of Haji is there, the small beard is also there, the no hair is also there. So you can see that, mashallah, he's a Haji Sahib. But the same Haji Sahib, dear friends, on his way returning home, there's no salat at all. And then when he comes to customs also, you know exactly where he's come from. When you see the double screen TV screens and the camcorders and the videos, VCRs and all these things, then you know for sure Haji Sahib is back. Isn't it? Then you know for sure the Haji Sahib is back when you see these type of things. And these type of things, dear friends, do happen. These things do happen. For example, when I was studying in South Africa, you'd find that during the time of Hajj, dear friends, they would employ more people at the customs. The customs will become more busy and they will make sure to stop all the Hajis. Why? Because there were so many cases where they asked the person anything to declare, no, nothing at all. And when they pick up the sleeves of the women folk, the whole thing is full of gold bracelets and gold. One hand's full of gold bracelets, the other is full of gold watches. So they caught people in such a manner, so they know for sure that when these Muslims come from Hajj, and in South Africa, where the African black people, for some reason, obviously, and you don't blame them, they think that this is like a lottery. When Muslims win a lottery, you go there and you come back with so many prizes or something. That is a journey of business. They just regard it to be a business trip where so many Muslims are going for business. One place I went in Jamaat in South Africa, where there was a security guard who was an African, and he was swearing us. He was swearing the Muslims so much, and he for some reason thought that you'd all go to the masjid to pray for money. He actually thought that we go to pray for money, that we do such and that for money, that's why we have so much money. So he was complaining that we don't get money, but we don't pray like you people, you just pray for money, you just live for money. And obviously he was saying this and what he sees, isn't it? Nobody taught him what Islam is, but from what he was seeing from the Muslims, this is what the impression that he got. So this is the impression that they get, is that when Muslims return, they come back from somewhere where they've done good shopping, etc. And this is exactly, as I mentioned, one of the provisions that we take nowadays is also a huge, large shopping list, isn't it? This person wants these trainers, this one that type of tape recorder, this person wants that TV, that VCR, this one wants that type of things. And when a person goes for Hajj and you ask, by what do you want me to get the whole list, don't you ever ask, don't bother asking anybody. Rather say you like to travel light. Don't even ask anybody. Otherwise, instead of somebody saying, okay, now just bring me some kujur. In one day, there was once a time, dear friends, when the dates and the zamzam were a novelty. There was a time when it was a novelty, when you'd find that somebody in a locality has gone for Hajj, people would just return, people would go there just for, not to meet them, just for the zamzam and the dates. It was a novelty in that time. You just get a sip, a little bit of zamzam, and people used to appreciate it so much, dear friends. Now you find that the last thing anybody worries about is the zamzam and the dates. So when the Haji comes and he puts the dates, then you think, oh yes, this is thing, there's zamzam and dates, you even totally forgot about it. And now Allah Ta'ala has made it so easy also, you don't have to bring it from there, just go to a local shop down the road and you can get your zamzam, etc. Why? Because, dear friends, we've regarded it to be just a trip. A trip where you go for business, where you go to buy things, where you go to meet, see different things. We haven't regarded it to be an ibadat. So that person who, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here, فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ تَقْوَى, the best form of provision is taqwa. So that person, dear friends, who goes with taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاتَّقُونِ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, وَاتَّقُونِ, fear me. Ya ulil albab, O people of sense, O people of intellect, fear me. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly ends off by saying, Ya ulil albab, that O people of sense, when you prepare for Hajj, use your sense, think for a while, that where are you going, for what purpose you are going. After all, you're not just going anywhere, you are going to the house of Allah itself, you are going to perform a great act as that of Hajj. You're going to go there to the Haram itself, the best of places, the Haram. You're going to be standing there in front of the Kaaba. That's where you find on top where it says, Wala fusuq, one of the things we did, that in days of Hajj is no rafath. One of the reasons for that is, as I said, there's a lot of intermingling that takes place. Wala fusuq, and do not transgress, do not commit sin. The reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of this is because you'll find during the days of Hajj, a lot of evil and sin also takes place. There are so many instances wherein a person is making tawaf also, and you find that he's somebody's stolen his wallet. These type of things happen. A person he's doing tawaf there, where tawaf of not of the supermarkets, he's doing tawaf of the Baytullah itself, the house of Allah. Any person who has no fear of Allah, you would expect that in front of the house of Allah, he'll still have some taqwa, at least fear Allah. But even whilst making tawaf, you'll find pickpocketers will come and pick a person's pocket. So you even have those people who won't even fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the Kaaba itself. Because of so many things people see, the intermingling, etc., it becomes very easy for a person. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when you're in these lands, wala fusuq, in these areas, have an ya ulil albab, or people of sense. Mean that if anybody has any sense in him, he will perform the entire journey correctly, he'll prepare himself correctly from home. Now one thing that we must realize also, فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى doesn't mean that a person does not go to Hajj until he starts performing his salat. We have a lot of people who delay going for Hajj with the excuse that at the moment I am not practicing. A lot of people say, well, once I start performing my salat, once I start keeping a beard, once I start keeping fast, etc., then I'll go for Hajj. They think that one of the requisites of Hajj is that you should be practicing. If you're not practicing, you can't go for Hajj. In none of the farais of Hajj has this been mentioned. The only farais is man istata'a ilayhi sabila, the one who has the means of performing it, meaning financial means, on him for Hajj becomes farz. Not that person who performs his farais, the salat, he does his zakat, he gives the sawm, the fast, or the person who has a beard, etc., only Hajj becomes farz at that time. This isn't the case at all. So a person should not delay his Hajj on that excuse that until you don't have taqwa, you should not perform the Hajj. This isn't the case either, because you won't know when you'll get taqwa. Rather, it's a case of you go for Hajj and you return with taqwa. And that's why you find, dear friends, those people who follow this ruling of preparing and going with taqwa, dear friends, when they return, they will return كَيَوْمٍ وَلَدَتْهُ أُمُّهُ. Nabi Kareem mentions, like a person returns when his mother gave birth to him, free from all his sins. Elsewhere where we know, where Nabi Kareem has mentioned, Al-Hajj al-Mabrur laysa lahu al-jaza' ila al-Jannah, that for an accepted Hajj, the only reward for it is nothing but Jannah. Hajj al-Mabrur, what is Hajj al-Mabrur? Hajj al-Mabrur is, dear friends, an accepted Hajj. An accepted Hajj, obviously, you and I cannot say that his or hers or my Hajj is accepted. We do not know that. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows this. However, there are certain signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown us, and these are for those people who haven't gone for Hajj, signs for them to know whether a person's Hajj is accepted or not. And Fuqaha have mentioned what are the signs, that if, for example, a person was not performing his salah beforehand, now he returns, he performs his salah, this is a sign that his Hajj is accepted. He wasn't giving zakat, now he gives his zakat. He wasn't fasting, now he starts fasting. He didn't have a beard, now he has a beard. He had interest dealings, or his dealings were haram, or he was involved in haram. Now he returns and he stops doing these type of deeds. This is a sign that his Hajj is accepted. So if you see a person goes for Hajj and there's a change in him when he returns, this is the apparent sign that this is Hajj Mabrur, his Hajj has been accepted. And those who go and return, and you find no change in them, and you'll find that when a person goes for Hajj and returns, the Haji also has a honeymoon, or Hajj moon, or I don't know how whatever you want to say, period also. That is when he returns, mashallah. He has the jabba, obviously. He doesn't come back in Thai suit, he comes in the jabba. The beard is also growing to a certain extent, slight beard is there. And then when he comes also home, then the first few days the salat is also there. The honeymoon period is until the time when people come and visit him, pay the respects to him, come visit him, come for Zamzam, come for their goods, etc. That period of time, you can see that this person is Haji Sahib. The moment that finishes, now there's no more people knocking the door, no more visitors and that coming, you'll find slowly the long jabba. When they come also, jabbas are below the ankles also. Don't forget that when he comes also, the jabbas are below the ankles. And then as the days worn off, the jabba becomes short until it becomes a shirt. The small beard, which wasn't even a shari beard, then also eventually becomes short until that also, nothing there at all. And then 2 or 3 weeks after his return, you look at him and you call him Mr. Janab so and so, the title of Haji Sahib is also disappears, because now you don't even know he's a Haji Sahib. Now you don't even know he's Haji Sahib. Whereas there may be another person who hasn't even been for Hajj. He hasn't even been for Hajj, but because of his appearances, everybody calls him Haji Sahib. There's so many people call him Haji Sahib, Haji Sahib. Whereas poor Haji Sahib is still dreaming of Hajj, but because of his appearances, people call him Haji Sahib, because they expect the thing that this person, mashallah, must have been for Hajj. That's why his appearance is so blessed, he's such a blessed person. Whereas here this person has been for Hajj, he's been for so many Hajjs and nobody calls him Haji Sahib. So when this person who's never been for Hajj is called Haji Sahib, he wonders, out of 5-6 Hajjs and nobody calls me Haji Sahib. Obviously you may have been on the journey of Hajj, but you haven't been on Hajj. You may have been on the journey of Hajj, but you haven't been on the ibadat of Hajj. So this is why, dear friends, it's very, very important that when a person goes for Hajj, he should go khayr az-zari taqwa, he should go with taqwa, utilize the entire time with taqwa. Then you'll find when this person returns, dear friends, you'll see the nur from his face. You can see that he's returned from there. Why? Because if a person does no extra ibadat at all, he just goes to these blessed places of Makkah and Medina, dear friends, and he returns, there will be a beautiful nur on him. Although he may not do any excessive ibadat at all, just the fact that he goes there and his gazes have fallen on the Baytullah, just the fact that his gazes have fallen on the blessed masjid of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, just the fact that his gazes have fallen on the Mubarak, Roze Mubarak of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and just the fact that he's been in the sohbat of the mazar of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, dear friends, you'll find when he returns, his heart will be overfilled with so much taqwa and so much nur, that will then become eminent from a person's face. That's why you'll find that the Haji, dear friends, as one poet says, in a long ashar that he has, the meaning of which he says, that because he takes an oath that I would kiss the forehead of a Haji. I feel like kissing the forehead of the Haji, or kissing the eyes of the Haji. Why? Because of those eyes which have laid sight on the Baytullah, have laid sight on the masjid of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Why? Because when they return, dear friends, you can actually see the nur from their eyes. And you'll have those people, dear friends, who come back and you can't see anything at all. You need to on lights also. So, dear friends, خير الزاد التقوى واتقون يا أولي الألباب, fear Allah, O people of sense. There are more verses which we'll continue with next week, inshallah. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillah.